Some people spend their entire lives trying to become talented enough to matter. And then there are people like Rock Lee, who were told from the beginning that no matter how hard they tried, they never would. That's what makes him different. Not because he wins. Not because he's powerful. But because he keeps moving forward in a world that gave him every reason not to. And the painful part is, most people understand that feeling more than they want to admit. Because this isn't really a story about ninjas. It's a story about what happens when you realize the thing everyone else does naturally, will never come naturally to you. And whether you keep going anyway. In Naruto, almost every major character is born with something special. A legendary bloodline. A monster sealed inside them. A genius-level intellect. A forbidden power. Even Naruto, despite his loneliness and failure early on, was always destined for something larger. But Rock Lee? He has none of that. No natural talent for ninjutsu. No rare clan ability. No hidden power waiting to awaken. He's introduced as an underdog, but that word almost feels too generous. Because underdogs usually have hidden potential. Rock Lee is terrifying because he might actually be ordinary. And yet somehow, he becomes one of the most inspirational characters in the entire series. Not because the story bends reality to reward him. But because it doesn't. One of the most important scenes in Naruto happens before Rock Lee even throws a punch. It's the moment we learn he cannot use ninjutsu or genjutsu at all. On the surface, it feels like a setup. The classic anime formula, weak character secretly becomes strong. But that's not what this story is doing. Because Naruto often treats hard work and destiny as opposing forces. Rock Lee is the first character who fully embodies what hard work actually costs. Not aesthetically. Not motivationally. Literally. He trains until his hands bleed. He repeats movements endlessly. He pushes himself past humiliation, exhaustion, and physical collapse. And the important detail is this, the series never pretends that effort automatically erases limitation. That's what makes him emotionally real. Most people have experienced some version of this. You work harder than everyone around you, and still fall behind people who barely try. That feeling changes you. It creates a very specific kind of loneliness, the loneliness of effort without guarantee. And Rock Lee lives inside that feeling constantly. Then comes the Chunin Exams. Specifically, the fight against Gaara. Even people who barely remember Naruto remember this fight. Because something deeper than action is happening inside it. On screen, Lee removes the ankle weights everyone thought were symbolic. But they weren't symbolic. They were real. And suddenly the floor cracks beneath him. The scene works because it externalizes something psychological. For the first time, the audience understands how much invisible weight this person has been carrying the entire time. Not just physically. Emotionally. Socially. Internally. Most people know what it feels like to walk around carrying pressure nobody else can see. The pressure to prove yourself. The pressure to compensate for what you lack. The pressure to become impressive enough that people finally stop underestimating you. And when Lee drops those weights, the scene becomes larger than anime. It becomes human. Because everyone wants that moment. The moment where all the hidden effort finally becomes visible. Where people finally understand what it took just for you to stand beside them. But the fight becomes truly unforgettable after that. Because Lee loses. And that matters more than if he had won. Most stories reward effort because audiences want fairness. Naruto, at least here, does something more honest. Sometimes effort is not enough. Sometimes you can do everything right. And still get hurt. Lee opens the inner gates. Effort is not enough. Sometimes you can do everything right, and still get hurt. Lee opens the inner gates. His body starts destroying itself just to keep up. He pushes beyond what should even be possible. And for a brief moment, it feels transcendent. Not because he becomes stronger than Gaara, but because he becomes stronger than the limits everyone placed on him. That's the emotional victory. And then the story punishes him for it. Brutally. Even unconscious, his body keeps trying to fight. That image stayed with people for years because it captures something difficult to explain, the human instinct to keep proving yourself even after you're already broken. A lot of people live like that. They keep working. Keep performing. Keep pretending they're okay. Not because they're ambitious anymore. But because stopping feels unbearable. Because if they stop, they might have to confront the fear that none of it was enough. And then comes one of the quietest devastating moments in the series. Lee learns he may never fight again. Not, he needs recovery. Not, he needs rest. His dream may simply be over. This is where most stories would pivot into rage or revenge. But Rock Lee's pain is smaller than that. Which makes it sadder. He doesn't lose power. He loses identity. Everything he believed about himself was built around effort. Training was not just something he did. It was the answer to his entire existence. If hard work can no longer save him, then who is he? A lot of viewers feel this scene without consciously understanding why. Because eventually, many people experience some version of it in real life. The athlete whose body gives out. The artist who burns out. The worker who realizes effort is consuming their life. The person who built their identity around usefulness and suddenly feels replaceable. What makes this painful is how recognizable it is. We are often taught that perseverance is the cure for insecurity. But sometimes perseverance becomes the mask hiding it. And this is why Might Guy matters so much. Their relationship is one of the most emotionally sincere mentor-student dynamics in anime. Because Guy never lies to Lee. He encourages him, yes. But he also understands the cruelty of the path Lee chose. Beneath all the comedy and exaggerated passion, you realize something important: Guy sees himself in Lee. Not as a prodigy. As someone who survived through sheer persistence. By the end of Naruto, stronger characters exist. Smarter characters exist. More important characters exist. But very few characters feel as emotionally truthful as Rock Lee. Because he reflects a reality people spend years trying not to think about. What if life never becomes fair? What if some people truly start behind others? What if effort does not always lead to reward? Rock Lee looks directly at those questions. And instead of becoming hopeless, he keeps going. Not perfectly. Not painlessly. But sincerely. In the end, Rock Lee's greatest strength was never hard work. It was vulnerability. The willingness to try publicly. To fail publicly. To care